When life starts feeling like a lot, just figuring out where to even begin to get help can feel like the biggest challenge. So today, we're going to create a kind of guide to the world of therapy. We'll explore all the different paths you can take just so you can get a clear map of what's out there. Let's get into it. And let's start with maybe one of the most powerful examples I can think of right now, Simone Biles. When the greatest of all time, the GOAT, steps back from the world stage to focus on her mental health, that sends a message. A really loud and clear one. It tells all of us that asking for help isn't a weakness. It's actually an incredible act of strength.
So when we talk about treatment, I want you to picture a big fork in the road. There are really two main paths you can go down. The first is the psychological path. That's the one that deals with your mind, your thoughts, your experiences. And the other is the biological path, which works directly on the body and the brain itself.
Okay, so let's break that down. That psychological path, that's what we call psychotherapy, or you've probably heard it called talk therapy. It's all about using conversation, listening, and new strategies to work through problems. The other path, the biological one, uses treatments like medication to change how your body is functioning, often targeting brain chemistry to ease symptoms. It's kind of like the difference between upgrading your thinking, your software, versus making a change to the hardware itself. Now, this brings up a question that I know confuses a lot of people. What's the real difference between a psychologist and a psychiatrist? Well, it really just boils down to their training and what they're allowed to do. A clinical psychologist has a PhD or PsyD, and they are the experts in psychotherapy. A psychiatrist, on the other hand, is a medical doctor, an MD. They can also do therapy, but, and this is the key difference, they can prescribe medication.
All right, let's dive deeper down that first path, the talking cures. We're going to unpack 4 of the biggest, most influential approaches in the world of psychotherapy.
To get a handle on these, it helps to think about them in 2 different ways. First is the main goal to get insight, like digging deep into the root causes of a problem. Or is it more about managing symptoms and building skills right here, right now? And second is the therapist directive, meaning are they actively giving advice, or are they non-directive, letting you, the client, lead the way? Keep those 2 ideas in mind as we go. So let's start with the classic, the original, psychodynamic therapy. This one has its roots in Freud, and its whole thing is that our problems today are really just symptoms of these deep, unconscious conflicts, usually from way back in our childhood. The goal here is pure insight. It's all about bringing that hidden stuff out into the open so you can understand it. So this one is definitely insight-focused and tends to be more non-directive.
Okay, now for a totally different vibe, humanistic therapy. This approach is super optimistic. The core belief is that we all have this built-in capacity to heal and grow, kind of like how an acorn already has everything it needs to become a giant oak tree. The therapist's job isn't to fix you, but to create this warm, supportive space where you can figure yourself out and grow. This one is also insight-focused, but it's very, very non-directive.
Now, let's do a complete 180. Behavior therapy could not care less about the why. It is all about the what. It's totally action-oriented. The idea is simple. If you learned a problem behavior, you can unlearn it. The goal isn't some deep insight, it's about making a direct, practical change. So this one is all about symptoms and skills, and is very directive. A perfect example of behavior therapy is something called systematic desensitization, especially for phobias. It's so clever. First, you make a list of your fears, from kinda scary to, oh my gosh, no way. Then you learn how to get super relaxed. And then you slowly, step by step, work your way up that list while staying calm. You are literally retraining your brain to connect that thing you fear with a feeling of relaxation instead of panic. It's like you're rewriting the code.
And our 4th big one, cognitive therapy, is based on this incredibly powerful idea. It's not the events in our life that upset us, it's our thoughts about those events. So the goal here is to become a detective of your own thoughts, to catch those automatic negative patterns, challenge them, and swap them out for more helpful ones. This is another symptoms and skills-focused and directive approach, and you often see it paired with behavior therapy in what's called CBT, one of the most common and effective therapies out there today.
Okay, so we've covered the talking cures. Now let's jump over to that other path we talked about at the beginning, the biological toolkit. These are the treatments that work directly on the brain and the body's systems.
So, a big part of this toolkit is medication. You have things like anti-anxiety drugs that help calm your whole nervous system down. You have antidepressants, which help regulate mood, often by working with brain chemicals like serotonin. Then there's lithium, a classic mood stabilizer for bipolar disorder. and antipsychotic drugs, which can help with symptoms like hallucinations, often by working with the neurotransmitter dopamine.
But it's not just about medication. There are also brain stimulation therapies. The one most people have heard of, and maybe have some intense ideas about, is electroconvulsive therapy, or ECT. It's a serious procedure that's reserved for very severe depression that nothing else has touched. But there are newer approaches too, like transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. This uses targeted magnetic pulses to stimulate specific brain areas, and it usually has way fewer side effects. It just shows you how these biological treatments are getting more and more precise.
You know, therapy isn't always a one-on-one in a room kind of thing. In fact, some of the most profound healing can happen when we connect with other people who get it. So let's look at how treatment can use the power of community.
This is where group therapy is just so amazing. It offers these benefits you simply can't get by yourself. One of the biggest is something called universality. That incredible feeling when you realize, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one who feels this way. Or altruism, the self-esteem boost you get from actually helping someone else in the group. It becomes this safe little lab where you can practice new ways of being and get real, honest feedback.
So we've looked at psychodynamic, humanistic, behavioral, cognitive, biological, a whole bunch of different approaches. It's a lot, which begs the question, what's the secret sauce here? What's the active ingredient that actually makes any of this stuff work?
Well, first things first, does therapy even work? I mean, really? And the answer, from decades and decades of research, is a huge, resounding yes. Look at this. People who go to psychotherapy are almost 3 times more likely to get better than people who get no treatment at all. The data is just crystal clear. Therapy is incredibly effective.
So if one type of therapy isn't necessarily better than another, what is it that makes the difference? Well, it turns out it boils down to 3 common factors. First, the therapeutic alliance. That's the bond, the trust, the connection you have with your therapist. Second is the therapists themselves. Are they empathetic? Are they skilled? But the single most important factor, more important than the method, more important than anything else, is you, the client. Your motivation, your participation, your strengths, that is what makes change happen.
And this all leads us to maybe the most powerful takeaway from our entire conversation today. Therapy doesn't make clients better. Clients make therapy work. That is such an empowering idea, right? It means that the person who's seeking help is actually the one with the most power in the room. The therapist is an essential guide, a partner, for sure. But you are the one driving this thing forward.
So let's just end on this thought. What if we reframe this whole thing? What if therapy isn't about fixing something that's broken, but it's more like a construction project for building a better life? If that's the case, if therapy is your journey to build a better life, what's the very first brick you'd want to lay?